We knew that we wouldn't quite find the real place in Belfast because it's 50 years on and not in the UK. So it was the gift was to be able to build it with real specificity, size of houses, size of rooms, you know, the width of the street, and then to be able to shoot it every which way. If you're on location in a real place, you have to buy the place out. There are endless logistical problems that can happen. When you build something, you just get a sense of freedom. You get a sense of control. You can create, you can paint pictures in a different way. So it doesn't have to be that big because the world of visual effects can allow you to expand it a bit if you have the money and the budget. And so I was able to do something that was both built on specific reference of what that specific street looked like, and also how Buddy saw it. When I first went back to the street I was brought up in Belfast, I said, but this is a street for very small people. Forgetting that when I'd lived in it, I was a very small person, so it had seemed enormous to me. So I didn't have to make it quite literal, but everything imaginative that struck the eyes and ears of a 10-year-old is in that set. That's what Jim Clay helped build, and it allowed us to be tremendously flexible in the shooting. If it's curious about black and white, when we see pictures, when we see a sort of Cartier-Bresson picture, you know, a black and white still, somehow it sort of bespeaks additional authenticity, additional reality, and yet it is not the way we personally see the world, which would be in more sort of encyclopedic color. It's a curious paradox that you get a grittier and more realistic effect from a poetic treatment. And so this was something that I knew I wanted to be part of the sort of mythology of this story. And it's different. There's a Hollywood black and white, and there's what I would call a sort of European black and white. And the European black and white, on the whole, it has a more sort of sometimes emaciated quality. It has its own sort of particular beauties. But it was the Hollywood black and white that kind of branded itself on my imagination. Well, speed, we were working, inevitably it just doesn't matter what the situation is, there's never enough time and there's never enough money to sort of meet what your imagination suddenly thinks is required. It's not like you want to be profligate, but sometimes that's just how it seems. So rapport, you know, shorthand with people you've worked with before, an understanding of, you know, visual sensibilities, the way you like to frame things. I particularly have developed by now a sort of fairly clear sense of how I like to frame things. Hopefully not the same every time, but it's quite a strong taste sometimes. Thank God it is shared and indeed developed and enhanced by Harris Zambalucos. I've been very lucky with my photographic collaborators over the years. And Jim Clay, as you give him an idea and he runs with it, they come back knowing that they have a degree of freedom that is clear based on previous experience. You know, they know what they can run with and what they perhaps need to run by me. You know, I'm pretty good at decisions and relatively clear about what I want. The film is really about that. It's about an understanding, and it isn't a complete understanding. It's merely a sort of in the current state of knowledge, and the knowledge is not just intellectual. It's knowledge of the heart, of who you are and where you came from and how those things add up, and that an acknowledgement of it is. Can be very powerful, certainly not just for yourself, because if it's only for yourself, really write something down or have a, you know, have a good think about it. But if you believe that there could be something that is powerfully recognizable to other people, then it may be worth sharing that story. And in this case, I thought it was. So inevitably, you go through a very sort of full experience of it. Which is often, yes, one of the things I think I've learned to do on this is be very happy about being emotional and, you know, crying a great deal of the time. But often it's to do with recognition and on a profound level, gratitude. I think it is sometimes presumptuous to sort of hope that audiences will take anything particular away. I hope they'll be entertained. I think there's a spirit. In Belfast, there's a spirit and a vitality in the place itself that I hope is reflected in this film. And I think it's a spirit and a vitality and a humor, which I think is very life-affirming. And I hope that people feel that the joy and sometimes the sorrows of what happens in that city, and in this particular case in the life of this family in this street, are something that they can recognize and perhaps sympathize with, be compassionate about, and to some extent, be consoled when it comes to some of the difficult decisions in their own lives, perhaps to see, in that famous phrase, we read to know that we are not alone. In stories like this, maybe we understand that we are not alone when we look at these reflections of other lives. And if that was the case, I'd be thrilled.